Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a case today that, well, it's a real head scratcher. I mean, it makes you wonder about, like, all those assumptions we make about wealth, privilege.
Yeah, you think you have people figured out,
Right.
and then boom, something like this happens. It's the case of Luigi Mangione,
Ah, Luigi Mangione.
accused of murdering Brian Thompson, a big name in healthcare, a CEO.
And we've got a whole stack of BBC articles here about the Mangione family history. I mean,
Mm.
the deeper you go, the more you're just like, wait, what?
It's the contradictions in this case that get me. This guy, Luigi, on paper, he's got it all right. Family money, went to the best schools.
The whole 9 yards.
And yet here he is, charged with murder, and there are these whispers of, like, anti-establishment views floating around, too. It's a strange mix.
It's like, how do those pieces even fit together? But okay,
Yeah.
let's back up a bit for everyone listening. Brian Thompson, he was the CEO of United Healthcare. He's shot and killed in New York City.
A few days later.
5 days, to be exact.
5 days later, Luigi Mangione gets picked up in Pennsylvania, charged with the murder.
And it wasn't just a simple arrest either.
Right. Oh, no, not at all. They found a whole bunch of stuff on him. A gun, obviously, ammunition, fake IDs, like he was ready to disappear. Oh, and a good chunk of cash.
Cash is king, as they say.
But here's the kicker. They also found this handwritten note, like a manifesto or something, where he's railing against corporate bigwigs.
Police actually quoted a line from it. It said, "Frankly, these parasites had it coming." Chilling stuff.
Yeah, you start to think, okay, maybe this was about more than just a random act of violence. Was this like a targeted attack?
Revenge, maybe? Some kind of vendetta against healthcare companies?
It's possible, but then on top of all of that, you have this other detail that's just, well, bizarre.
Okay, lay it on me.
The shell casings at the crime scene, they were inscribed with these words: deny, defend, depose.
Whoa. Okay, that's creepy. And weirdly specific.
Right. And if you think about it, those are words you hear all the time when you're dealing with insurance claims, lawsuits, that whole world.
It's like he's deliberately calling out the system.
Yeah.
Like he's making a statement.
Exactly. It's planned, symbolic. You don't just accidentally inscribe words on bullet casings. So yeah, you've got this possible resentment angle toward healthcare. But then you have to factor in the whole Mangione family history, too.
Which is quite the story.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Mangionies, they're basically royalty in Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Italian-American community. Their story is like straight out of a movie.
Mm.
From nothing in Little Italy to, well, everything.
They built an empire, really. Country clubs, golf courses, you name it.
Assisted living facilities even.
Oh, right, right.
They were seen as these like super successful entrepreneurs, always giving back, donating to charities.
Pillars of the community, that's the phrase. The BBC talked to this woman, Giovanna Acquia Blatterman. She's lived in Baltimore forever and actually knew like 3 generations of Mangiones. Yeah. And she was saying how generous they were, down to earth, approachable, the whole self-made and giving back thing.
So wait, she knew Luigi too.
She did. And she remembers him as being clever, good-looking, a nice guy. She was just floored when the news about the arrest broke.
So it's this weird clash, right? This family with this squeaky clean image, and then boom, this horrific crime. It's hard to reconcile those two things.
Makes you wonder how much a family's reputation, their public persona, influences how we view someone. Especially when you're dealing with something as shocking as this.
It's like, can you separate the individual from the family legacy?
Exactly. And that's where things get even more complicated when you look at Luigi's upbringing. It's a world away from what his grandfather experienced. This guy, he didn't want for anything. Private school, Gilman, that's like the top boys' school in Baltimore.
Yeah, not exactly roughing it.
And then he goes to UPenn, Ivy League, gets his degree in computer science.
Talk about a privileged life.
Yeah, you start to see how this case is becoming way more than just a simple whodunit. It's about class, about expectations, about the weight of legacy.
And then there are the people who knew Luigi back then.
Yeah.
Right. Their descriptions just add another layer of confusion.
Oh, for sure.
A classmate from Gilman said he had no enemies. Top of his class, everyone liked him. A friend from UPenn said the same thing. Super normal, really smart. Even an old roommate talked about how Luigi dealt with chronic back pain, like without ever complaining.
Stoic. Tough.
Right. And this roommate, he was adamant that Luigi would never hurt a fly.
It's like we're looking at 2 different people, right? The public face and then whatever was going on behind closed doors.
A private reality.
Yeah. But then comes this twist.
Hit me.
Investigators find Luigi's Goodreads account. And let's just say his reading list is not exactly lighthearted beach reads.
Okay, what was he into?
Well, besides reviews about books on back pain, which, makes sense given his history,
Sure.
he also reviewed the Unabomber Manifesto.
Hold up, the Unabomber. As in Ted Kaczynski, the guy who is sending bombs through the mail.
The one and only. And that detail, that just throws a whole other wrench into things.
Talk about a red flag.
Right. Here's this young man from a wealthy family, elite education. He's got every opportunity in the world, and he's reading and seemingly engaging with the work of a guy who, well, he basically rejected everything modern society stands for.
It's like, what was he looking for in that?
What did he see in the Unabomber's ideology? Was it a validation of his own frustrations, maybe with the healthcare system, given his back pain?
Or was it something even deeper? Like,
Yeah.
did he see the Unabomber as a role model, a twisted kind of hero? I mean, this wasn't just some casual reading material. This was someone who acted on his anger and resentment in a terrifying way.
And when you consider that the police say Luigi specifically targeted Brian Thompson, the CEO of a major health insurance company.
It all starts to feel a lot less random.
Yeah, it's like these puzzle pieces are scattered all over the place, and we're still trying to figure out how they all fit together.
So where does the Mangione family fit into all of this? What are they saying?
Well, they haven't said much publicly. They released a statement, the usual shocked and devastated kind of thing. But other than that, they're staying silent.
Which I guess is understandable. It's got to be a nightmare for them. Their grandson accused of this terrible crime.
I can't even imagine what they're going through. This family, they've built their whole lives around this image of success, philanthropy, community involvement, and then this happens. It's a PR nightmare, but also it's a personal tragedy on a whole other level.
So the question is, how did someone like Luigi, with all the advantages he had, end up in this situation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, what happens in someone's life to make them choose that path? It's a reminder that even with privilege, even with every opportunity in the world, there's still this human element, this capacity for darkness that we can't always predict or explain.
It's a sobering thought. We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into the case of Luigi Mangione.
Going through these articles, there's something about Luigi's time in Hawaii that just sticks out.
Hawaii.
Yeah, apparently he was super into surfing. Spent a lot of time with this group. Surf break, they're called. But he had to leave. Seems like his back pain got so bad he couldn't handle it anymore.
That makes sense. All that surfing, paddling.
Yeah, and hiking too.
Oh, right. I remember reading that. There was a friend of his from Hawaii. He mentioned Luigi had surgery on his back at some point. So we're talking chronic pain, probably a whole lot of frustration dealing with the healthcare system.
Interesting.
It makes you wonder if that played a role in, well, everything.
You're thinking maybe that fueled the resentment? We know he had that note, that manifesto thing, talking about corporate elites.
And that line, frankly, these parasites had it coming.
Yeah, that one's hard to forget.
It's not exactly subtle.
Nope. And then you layer on those inscribed shell casings, deny, defend, depose. It's hard not to see the connection, right?
In insurance companies, yeah. It's like he took those words, those tactics, the things that probably made his life harder, and turned them into, well, a weapon.
Almost like a twisted form of protest
Yeah.
or a message.
But a message delivered in the most horrific way possible. But I'm curious, have investigators looked into the actual, mechanics of those inscriptions? Like, was there a special tool used? Could they trace it back to Luigi?
That's a good question. I don't see anything about that in these articles. You'd think that'd be something they'd look into, though.
Right. I mean, if they could link a specific tool to Luigi, there'd be pretty damning evidence.
Oh, absolutely. It would show premeditation. At the very least, we'd be talking about a calculated act, not just a spur-of-the-moment thing.
Which brings us back to the whole Unabomber thing. Reading that manifesto, that's not something you just do on a whim. It suggests he was interested in, well, extreme ideas.
Yeah, ideas about violence as a solution to societal problems.
It's so ironic, though, isn't it? This guy, he comes from a wealthy family, went to great schools, he's got all these advantages, and yet he's finding common ground with a guy who, well, he basically hated everything Luigi's life represented.
It's a strange parallel. And in his Goodreads review, he actually calls the Unabomber a political revolutionary. It makes you wonder what exactly he was drawn to.
The critique of technology, maybe? Or was it more about the system itself? Maybe he saw the Unabomber as someone who was fighting back against the same forces that he felt were working against him,
Yeah.
like with the healthcare system, for example. Or maybe Maybe it was more about the psychology of it all. Like, he saw the Unabomber as a cautionary tale.
Someone who let their anger consume them.
Yeah, like a warning about what happens when you go too far.
It's hard to say. But one thing's for sure, Luigi was exploring some pretty dark stuff. It's a reminder that even people who seem to have it all can be drawn to these extreme ideologies, especially when they feel like they're being wronged or ignored. And speaking of the Mangione family, they've been pretty quiet throughout all of this.
Besides that initial statement, yeah. Shocked, devastated, all that.
Right. But no real comments, no interviews, nothing. It's gotta be tough, though, being in their position.
Imagine that, your grandson accused of murder.
Mm.
It's a betrayal on a whole other level.
You want to believe in your family, you want to defend them, but then there's this horrible act, and it's like, how do you even process that?
It's a reminder that family loyalty only goes so far.
Yeah, and sometimes even the people closest to us can surprise us in ways we never could have imagined.
So we've got Luigi, this privileged upbringing, chronic pain, this fascination with the Unabomber, and then this terrible crime. It's like we're trying to understand a puzzle where half the pieces are missing.
We can analyze, speculate, try to connect the dots, but ultimately the truth, the real why behind it all, that's something we may never fully grasp.
And for everyone listening, it's important to remember that everything we're talking about, it's based on what we know now. This investigation is still ongoing. New information could come out that changes everything.
Exactly. We're just trying to make sense of what we have.
But even with all the information in the world, some questions, they just don't have easy answers.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those cases.
Well, we're going to keep digging. We'll be back with the final part of our deep dive into the case of Luigi Mangione. So we've gone deep on this case, right? I mean, from the crime itself to Luigi's past, his family, even his interesting reading material.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And as we wrap things up, the question that keeps coming back to me is like, what's the lesson here? What can we learn from all of this?
Well, I think for me, it's about the dangers of making assumptions. You know, we see someone, we hear about their background, their family, and we think we've got them figured out.
Like we put them in a box.
Exactly. But this case, it just blows all of that up. I mean, here's Luigi. He's got money, a good family, went to the best schools. On paper, he's got it all.
The American dream.
Right. And yet, here he is, accused of this brutal crime. And there are all these signs pointing to, well, some pretty dark stuff going on beneath the surface. It's a reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
Totally. We can't just assume that wealth equals happiness or that privilege equals, like, inner peace. And in Luigi's case, it seems like his struggles, especially with his chronic pain and, maybe feeling let down by the healthcare system, it really shaped how he saw the world.
Oh, absolutely. It makes you realize how easy it is to overlook someone's pain, especially when they seem to have it all.
Yeah. It's like we expect him to just be grateful, right?
Right.
That everyone's fighting their own battles.
Exactly. And this case is a reminder to be a little more understanding, to have more empathy. You never know what someone else is going through, even if they look like they have everything figured out.
We've talked a lot about the Unabomber thing, and I think that part of the story is also a cautionary tale. I mean, it's pretty scary to think that someone, especially someone like Luigi, could be so drawn to such extreme ideas. Ideas about violence, about, taking things into your own hands.
It's a reminder that ideology is powerful. Especially these days when information or misinformation spreads so quickly online. I mean, think about it. Luigi read the Unabomber's Manifesto, a document that literally advocates for violence, and it clearly had an impact on him.
It's chilling to think about, and it makes you realize how important critical thinking is. We're constantly bombarded with information, and we have to be able to sort through it to figure out what's real, what's propaganda, what's just plain dangerous.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We can't just blindly accept everything we read or hear. We have to question things, do our own research, think for ourselves.
And be willing to, push back against ideas that are harmful or dangerous, even if they're coming from someone we know, someone we respect.
It's about being informed, but it's also about being responsible. Recognizing that words have power and ideas can have consequences.
And speaking of consequences, it's important to remember that this case, it's not just about Luigi. There's a victim here, Brian Thompson, and his family. They're the ones who are truly suffering. Their loss, their pain, that's the real tragedy here.
Absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in the details, the mystery, the psychology of it all. But we can't forget that a life was lost and a family was destroyed, and that's something that we should all keep in mind.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the big takeaway is this. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't judge a book by its cover. And always, always be willing to keep learning, keep asking questions. Because the truth, it's often a lot more complicated than we initially think.
This case, it's a stark reminder that human beings were complex creatures. We're capable of great things, but also of terrible things. And sometimes there are no easy answers, no simple explanations.
And that's where we leave you today. Keep digging, keep exploring, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.